Morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Oxnard City Council Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting for September 8th, 2020 at 11:01. The regular meeting, 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. is what's scheduled. We can take the roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Member Flynn.
Present.
Member McDonald.
Here.
Chair Perrello.
Here. Madam Clerk, beg your pardon. Madam Clerk, can you please lead us in the flag salute? And if any member of council has a request for a moment of silence, please offer it up.
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have some public comments, but we do not have public comments on items not on the agenda unless I stand corrected, Madam Clerk.
No, you're correct.
Okay, moving to the consent agenda, we have the City Clerk's Department approval of the minutes. Have my fellow committee members had a chance to review them, and do they have a recommendation?
Move the recommended action.
I have a motion from Mr.
Second.
And a second from Mr. McDonald. Roll call, please.
Member Flynn.
Yes, aye.
Member McDonald.
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
The motion to approve carries 3-0.
Okay, moving on to reports. D1, Public Works Department. Excuse me, beg your pardon. The City of Oxnard proposed truck route modifications. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution pursuant to Oxnard City Code Section 8-3, amending the City of Oxnard truck route map and removing the following road segments from the designated truck route in the city: Oxnard Boulevard from US 101 freeway to Gonzales Road, and Vineyard Avenue from US 101 freeway to Oxnard Boulevard. The contact person is Rosemary Gaglion, and we will have a speaker at the end of this, Ms. Pat Brown. Staff, please take it away.
One second, Chair. We're having some technical difficulties over here. Thank you. Yeah. Good morning, Chair Perrello and committee members Flynn and McDonald. I'm Tatiana Arnaud, your city engineer, and I'm here to discuss the proposed truck route modifications. Sorry, more technical difficulties. Yeah, if you can move the slide, please. Go back one slide, thank you. So the recommendation is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution pursuant to Oxnard City Code Section 8-3, amending the City of Oxnard truck route map and removing the following road segments from the designated truck routes in the city. These include Oxnard Boulevard from the US 101 freeway to Gonzales Road and Vineyard Avenue from the US 101 freeway to Oxnard Boulevard. So here's a map showing the locations we are proposing to remove from the truck route. Those locations are highlighted in red. Everything that's in green is currently an existing mapped truck route through Caltrans. Next slide, please. So as you may recall, in May of last year, the City Council approved the removal of the designated truck routes along Oxnard Boulevard between Gonzales and the 5 Points intersection, as well as 5th Street between Oxnard and Rose. However, some trucks have still been observed using Oxnard Boulevard. This is obviously problematic for a couple of reasons. One, the narrow streets with the tight turns at most street corners, especially in the downtown area. And then this is also contributing significantly to traffic congestion, especially during the peak hours. In the photo, you'll see a truck that was actually seen going northbound onto Oxnard as they were turning off of 5th Street. And what you don't see in this picture is that that truck actually hit one of our fire hydrants. So clearly this is an issue that needs to be resolved. And so we're hoping that removing the additional portions of the truck route from the truck map will help lessen those trucks trying to go down the boulevard. So next, thank you. So as I was mentioning, so the prohibition of the through trucks on Oxnard between Gonzales and the 5 Points intersection did have some success in reducing it. However, there still continues to be truck activity, mostly originating from the 101 freeway, which is requiring further restrictions. It's worth noting that this is enforceable by Oxnard PD per City Code Section 8-65, which includes the enforcement of truck routes within city limits. Therefore, should heavy trucks be seen driving through any roads that are not designated as truck routes within the city of Oxnard, police officers have the authorization to pull them over and issue citations accordingly. This is, of course, assuming that they are not making local deliveries, which are permitted under state laws. Next. So to reiterate, we are proposing to remove designated truck routes from Oxnard Boulevard from the 101 to Gonzales Road and Vineyard from the 101 to Oxnard Boulevard. There are alternate routes that are better suited to truck traffic, such as Rose or Rice Avenue, which are much wider than those that much wider than Oxnard Boulevard, and those will remain unchanged. We are not taking those off of the truck routes. There's a small financial impact to this. New signage and sign modifications will cost approximately $5,000. This is mostly for the removal of existing truck route signs that are out there on the boulevard, as well as to add new signs that prohibit the use of trucks down Oxnard Boulevard, at least remind the truck drivers that they're not supposed to be on there. The state gas tax fund operating budget has sufficient funding available this fiscal year for this purpose. That does conclude this presentation, and I'm available to take any questions.
Do the committees have any technical questions with this specific thing?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, and we'll answer the technical. We'll have a discussion after the public comment, but go ahead, Mr. McDonald. Thank you.
Tatiana, I know we've been working with Caltrans trying to get them to change the signage on 101 freeway. And I just got a notice last week that Director John Belinsky, who's in our region, is retiring. So I don't know if we've made any headway with that change yet or not.
So yes, last year, actually late last year, the Public Works Director and myself had a conversation with Caltrans about the removal of some of the confusing signs on the freeway. They told us it would take approximately a year to get that resolved, but they are working on it. We will follow up to make sure that that's still in action after his retirement.
Okay, once I hear who the replacement is for him, I will reach out to them also. Thank you very much.
Appreciated, thank you.
Were there any technical questions you had, Mayor?
Yes, I'd like to ask just about the signage a little bit. Maybe it was alluded to, and I wasn't paying attention to this, but on the extra cost, I think it was 5,000, whatever. That doesn't concern me, that specific element, but just where these signs will be posted.
So they're going to be posted most likely right off the freeway. So as these truck drivers are getting off the freeway, at least within city limits, we'll be posting no heavy trucks down Oxnard Boulevard signs. And we're also working with Caltrans on making sure that they see these signs on the freeway as well. So that way they are not even attempting to exit Oxnard Boulevard in the first place.
And what is the consequence for a truck? I mean, certainly a truck trying to make that turn that you just showed and they hit a fire hydrant, that's one issue. But what's the consequence for a truck that is not using an approved truck route?
So it's a citation, so they'll have to pay some fee if they are pulled over for this purpose.
I see. And how, other than normal enforcement, which is, we usually have a lot of motorcycle officers that will be on Oxnard Boulevard. How do we intend on enforcing it other than just the normal, enforcement? Is there anything extra that we're proposing or could propose that would make this, it's one thing to have these signs posted and everything else, but if it's not working, how do we plan on enforcing it?
So, Mayor, this is City Attorney. If vehicles are operated negligently and damage city property, we will go after, file insurance claims with those operators, insurers, and we will go after those negligent parties for reimbursement to the city to repair that damage.
And we'll also coordinate with police once this item is approved.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one public speaker, Ms. Pat Brown.
Hi, Pat. Hi, it's Michelle. You're live in the committee meeting, and we're on the truck route item. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Please begin.
Okay, this is for D as in dog 1. This is all about the proposed truck route modification. I agree with what you're wanting to do, but I think this is just a part of what else needs to be done. The truck route signs on the freeway coming southbound from Ventura to Oxnard. Those 2 big, huge white signs that direct the trucks off at Oxnard Boulevard off ramp. Those 2, they say the same thing. They need to be removed. And signs need to be put up out at Rice Avenue exit off the freeway so that the trucks get off there instead of off onto Oxnard Boulevard in the first place. So that really needs to happen along with this other part, or what you want to do isn't going to make any difference because those signs on the freeway are going to continue to direct the trucks off at Oxnard Boulevard. And so that's what they're going to do. So that is a problem within a problem. And I don't know how you're going to work it out, but somehow it has to be done. And I don't know why the state decided to put those traffic signs up to send the trucks down off onto Oxnard Boulevard in the first place. And I think it was because it was the interstate highway at that time, and now we've got that changed. So it's been a few years, so we need to change that along with it. So that was my comment. And this truck route problem is definitely a problem because I see the trucks on Oxnard Boulevard even when, and down near the 5 Points intersection, even when the signs tell them to stay off of there, they go on there anyway and just totally ignore it. And the reason is because they
30
want
seconds.
they want to enter on 7th Street, going eastbound on 7th Street from Oxnard Boulevard in where there's housing and little kids living there and whatnot, and that's a wrong place for them to go. So they can't be there in the first place. So, and they're continuing to do that. So if you get the signs off of the freeway and the signs that you want to put up, then beyond that, then maybe they will stay off of Oxnard Boulevard.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Brown has been one of the most vocal and outspoken and good intentioned speakers on this item for the years that I've been attending council meetings as a member of the public and as an elected official. I want to thank her for her comments. A little bit long-winded, but thank you. Do we have any discussion from the first question? There's no other speakers I have indicated, correct, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
Thank you. Any discussion from the 2 other committee members?
If there's no discussion, I would move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, I have some concern. I am in support of this, but I have some concerns that I would like to get addressed. Number one, from the city attorney, Mr. Fisher, I'm reading page 7 of the staff report, third paragraph down. It's giving the actual quote, and Ms. Tatiana Hernote did an excellent job again. Again, very good job. But there's a quote of City Code Section 8-65, and it's in quotations. And I just want to get to the fourth word. City police officers shall, and then it goes about enforce street traffic regulations. There is, my understanding, if there are vehicles that are not following the rules of the road, according to City Code Section 8.65, Mr. City Attorney, that the officers shall, which means they don't have an option to let it go, maybe, wish, could have. Shall means will do, required to give an enforcement ticket. Am I misunderstanding this?
Chair Perillo, with police enforcement of the city's codes, I would have to leave it to the police department to explain how they utilize their resources in choosing how to exercise this citation authority. There are instances where there may be competing needs for their attention. If an officer is on another call and sees a violation, they may have to proceed to that other call rather than break off of what their other activity is in order to address this issue. So it's more nuanced than just going to the dictionary and looking at the word shall.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Fisher, because I know that sometimes when it's like a little sticky thing, evidence and facts matter, and the facts indicate that it's shall, and shall has a definition, but I do understand the limited number of police that we have and the requirement for events at the same time, prioritizing and using the employees' judgment as the main response on this. But I believe that my question gets to the point that the mayor raised. With respect to enforcement, knocking over the fire hydrant, yeah, there's going to be a cost that's damaging city property. But what is the fine on a deal like this if we're supposed to not have trucks and not over 2 tons? I live off Vineyard Avenue. I recall when that went in, and there was a time when tickets were given, and now it does not seem to happen. What are those fines? Because I would think the strongest incentive to teach someone to do something is, I imagine you can all remember back when you were children, there were ways that your parents incentivized your learning curve. And in that learning curve, when you're an adult, usually one of the incentives is a financial fine. So I'm wondering, what are the fines for having the excess truck weight on these areas and commercial trucks in areas where they're prohibited? Do we have that knowledge that we can share?
So I'm looking it up in the city code right now, but I can't tell you for sure what the fine for this particular type of citation is, but there are defined fine schedules. There may be a particular vehicle code provision that sets a fine schedule for this. There's also, for certain types of violations, there's a graduated fine structure, penalty structure, depending on the number of offenses within, let's say, a 12-month period. So I don't know the answer for this for certain. I'd have to check with PD to see if there's something specific as to this type of offense.
Generally, the first violation of city code would be $100, and then subsequent would be $200, and then repeated beyond that would be $500 per year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fisher, and thank you, Mr. McDonald. The single public speaker on this, Miss Pat Brown, she brought up the issues of, in her view, where the trucks are in certain areas of the city. I do also, and I've shared with the city manager in areas where we have trucks, especially during harvest season of various commodities and crops that are grown in this area, specific to this area. We bring drivers and vehicles in that may have some history with the area, but oftentimes they're not. They're contracts. Go wherever the carrier, wherever their boss sends the truck. I believe that when we do change these signs, we need to seriously consider having signs internal to the city, especially where the major harvesting and shipping points are, that trucks need to proceed east versus potentially going west and getting some poor helpless driver who had never been to Oxnard before, aside from enjoying the weather and the ability to have a crop and a job, put himself in a place where he can get a ticket because he didn't see a sign that he wasn't supposed to go west on his particular roads and getting into a jam by getting on Oxnard Boulevard or Vineyard Avenue. But I do support this and I appreciate the presentation. And as the member of the public has said it numerous times, this has taken a long time to get here. But thank you very much. We have a roll call. Any final comments by the committee members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. You're muted, Brian.
Sorry, if you go to Caltrans's website, they do publish a truck route on a statewide basis. And general dispatching groups that run truck firms know to look at this to see what's an authorized truck route and what isn't. Because generally it's the dispatcher that will set up the truck route for the driver and give them directions as how and where to go.
Okay, thank you for that information. It definitely adds to the conversation. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we take a roll call vote, please?
Member Flynn,
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Aye.
Member McDonald,
Aye.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
The motion to approve carries 3-0.
Moving on to item 2, Public Works Department. Subject, and I'll have staff read the recommendation. They do a better job than I do on this. Subject, amendment to agreement for geotechnical investigation and seismic analysis of seawalls. And it indicates Rosemary Gagland, but I believe we will have someone else give the presentation.
Yes, good morning again, Chair and committee members. I'm Tatiana Arnaud, City Engineer, and I'm here to discuss the second amendment to agreement number 8554-19-PW with Tetra Tech Incorporated for geotechnical investigation and seismic analysis. So the recommendation is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a second amendment to agreement 8554-19-PW with Tetra Tech Incorporated for geotechnical investigation and seismic analysis of seawalls in the amount of $121,319 for a new not to exceed contract amount of $296,801 and to extend the term from March 14th, 2021 to March 14th, 2022. So back in the 60s and 70s, the city approved the development of about 740 attached and detached single-family homes and another 37 green belts to create the Mandalay Bay community. It's the picture that you see here on the right. The developer installed 2 types of walls. One is called Boise and the other is called a Zern style. And these were created to allow for residential lots over the water. So these walls were constructed according to 1960s building code standards, and within the first 20 years, it was observed that there was degradation in both types of seawalls due to the concrete's adverse reaction to the marine environment, especially in those areas where there's a change in tides, right? So where you see a lot of water hitting the walls and then they get dried out by the sun, there's a lot of degradation in those regions. Next one. This isn't working. Thank you. So over 30 years, hundreds of repairs have been made to these seawalls, including the removal of the degraded concrete, weep hole repairs, and concrete jacketing of the pilasters. Pictured here, you'll see on the left a Boise seawall with a concrete jacket on the pilasters. We actually have an ongoing project right now that's taking care of about 75 more of these. On the right-hand side, you'll see a Zern seawall with no repairs. So that's the degradation that we're speaking of. This is one of the ones that are in worse shape. Not all of them look like this, but this was just kind of to give you the effect. So I'm going to dive a little into the overall history before discussing the contract amendment. In December of 2017, Trans Systems completed the Mandalay Bay Seawalls Capital Improvement Program Phase C. This included the survey and recommendation of repair to the weep holes, pilasters, and walls. In early 2018, Public Works staff reviewed the accumulation of all the Trans Systems documents, so that includes phases A, B, and C, and determined that a value engineering process was warranted to provide the cost benefit options for the seawall replacement. And that's mostly due to the incredible cost to do these replacements. So we needed to make sure that every option was being looked at and all the boxes were being checked off. So in October of 2018, we released an RFP for Mandalay Bay Repair Feasibility Study and Phase 2, which would include the construction documents for the lots along 3900 to 3966 West Hemlock Street. Then in March of 2019, Tetra Tech began that study, and a draft was supplied to us in July of 2019. After we reviewed the draft, we requested an additional analysis of the seawalls to observe the level of deterioration of the seawalls and comparing those observations to the Trans Systems reports. So that was not a part of the original scope. We requested that separately. And on November 19th of 2019, the city manager approved that first amendment to the agreement for the additional analysis. Part of it required observing the walls at the annual low tide, which was a critical piece of data necessary to accurately analyze the deterioration of the seawalls. So it did take some time to get them out there to actually get the full picture of the seawalls, but it all depended on the tides. Next. So based on this analysis of the walls, Tetra Tech recommended two options. One is the installation of panels and tiebacks, and the second is the cantilever sheet piles. Next. So the tieback option would consist of installing a new panel in front of the existing wall, filling the space between the two walls, and installing tiebacks that extend down into the competent non-liquefiable soils. This is similar to the tiebacks that are in place now. However, these would extend much further, over 80 feet versus the 22 feet that are there now. Next. The second option is the cantilever sheet pile, which would consist of installing new sheet piles in front of the existing wall using a press-in method. So instead of driving it down with machinery that would cause a lot of noise, the press-in method kind of literally does what it says. It presses it in, which causes less vibration and noise for the homeowners in that area. This would also require filling a gap between the two walls. The downside to this option is that we would lose over 8 feet of navigable water, which means that docks would be lost, especially in those narrow channels. Next. So it was determined that the tieback option was the best solution for the Mandalay Bay to ensure the greatest area of navigable waters in the smaller back basins of the waterways. It's also worth noting that these new seawalls would be constructed to withstand seismic activity and adhere to current California Building Code standards. However, in order for the tieback method to be confirmed as a feasible option, additional geotechnical investigation is required. This includes the analysis of the effects of liquefaction and the potential lateral spreading behind the existing seawalls. Next. So this second amendment to the Tetra Tech agreement will allow the consultant to confirm this feasibility of the tieback method prior to initiating the phase 2 of the original contract, which is the plans and specs for the repairs along Hemlock Street. The scope for this amendment includes a geotechnical field exploration, a total of 4 exploratory borings across the site to depths of 40 to 50 feet below the ground surface. 2 of these borings will be on vacant lots, and the other 2 are planned in the street right-of-way. The final locations will actually be determined based on the consultant's coordination with each of the individual property owners. So for instance, if an owner on a vacant lot doesn't agree to allow us to do an exploratory boring, we'll have to look at another vacant lot and so on. But the intent is to have a total of 4. The scope also includes the laboratory testing of the boring samples after they're taken, the inspection of the existing piles to determine their current condition, the completion of the seismic vulnerability study of the existing seawalls, and the development of the structural design details of the tieback panel. So the total cost of the second amendment with Tetra Tech is an additional $121,000 and extends the contract through March 14th of 2022. With the approval of the FEMA HMGP grant recognition and appropriation for $132,000 in grant funds from the FEMA staff report that will be going to council on October 6th, there will be sufficient budget in project number 191601 for this amendment. This does conclude this presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arnett. Again, nice presentation. I have a couple of questions, but I would like to ask the city clerk, did we receive any, I don't have a public speaker on this item, but did we receive any emails or messages to add to this item?
So it looks like there was a late email that came in from Debbie Mitchell in support of the study, but I haven't received any other communications.
Okay, and that will be added to this item going forward, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Damn. Committee members, do you have a question or anything from staff for staff?
I don't have anything.
Mayor?
Yes, I mean, I don't have a question. I just have a statement to make. I mean, if you think about the stakeholders in this decision, it's city staff and the technical aspect that was presented in the history, which was an excellent job and an excellent summary. And then the other set of stakeholders are the seawall committee of which Ms. Mitchell is very important in that committee. And so it's being recommended by the staff. It's being supported by the seawall committee that's been very active. And I'm anxious to get this going and started. And I just want to thank the public works staff for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Arnott, I have a couple of questions with respect to the slide presentation. On slide 7, on the last, and I believe it's slide 7, the very last part, it said the part of the analysis required observing the walls at the annual low tide, which were critical pieces of the data. Did we have to wait for one specific low tide that occurred only once a year? That it's so low? I mean, is that what that meant, annual low tide?
Yes, we weren't actually waiting for the annual. It happened to land on the annual low tide, but we were looking at it on a quarterly basis. So we did it on the next lowest tide in the next quarter after the city manager approved the First Amendment, but it happened to land on the annual low tide.
Okay. The second question is on the second question is with respect to those low tides and the work that is currently going on, and there's an identification on slide 6 of phase 2 construction, the last bullet point on slide 6, documents between 3900 and 3966 West Hemlock Street. Does that, is that in relation to some potential litigation on that addresses?
Chair Perella, there has been litigation relating to the certain repairs.
Okay.
As far as those particular addresses, I don't have the case file with me to see how those relate to the plaintiffs in that matter.
Okay, thank you. That gave me enough information. The with respect to on slide 10, when we're talking about the sheet piles, and I appreciated your thing about the vibration. One of the big concerns of the neighbors that I have heard is not so much the noise, but the potential for vibration and what that would do to foundations and walls that need work. On this pressing of the items into the ground, how is the pressure exerted that it will not cause vibrations to surrounding areas?
So let me put it this way. It just gets pushed down very slowly. Very, very slowly. It's a slow, arduous process. It's a giant machine that's literally just pushing this thing down. So you won't have something constantly hitting against it. How do I relate this to something else? It's like trying to drive like a credit card through sand, right? You're just kind of pushing it in and hoping that nothing around it moves. But the idea is instead of using the normal pounding machines, the vibration in this should be very minimal. They'll hear more noise from honestly the contractors, the guys that are working out there than the actual machinery.
Okay, thank you. And on slide 9, with respect to the tieback, you had indicated that there was there could be some change with the distance. The distance is the perpendicular distance from the wall, or the horizontal distance along the walls? I didn't
So I'm
catch.
talking about an offset off of the wall. So the space between, it would be from the wall into the waterway.
Okay. How much of the waterway do we think would be lost?
With the tieback method, it'll only be inches. With the sheet piles, it would be over 8 feet.
Okay, that's very helpful. And the last, do we have an expectation of a completion date for this work?
Yes, actually. Let me pull that up. So based on their proposal, we have a schedule of, so the investigation and lab analysis will be done 8 weeks from the notice to proceed. So that notice to proceed would be after October 6th, after this item goes to council. Then after that, it'll be another 8 weeks for the seismic vulnerability study, so that you're at 16 weeks. And then finally, the last task will be another 4 weeks. So you're 20 weeks out from October 6th for this portion of the contract to be completed. And then after that, it'll be the time frame that they gave us for the construction documentation, which I believe was 6 months.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that's most helpful for the residents there, Ms. Arnott. And again, terrific work. Those are all the questions that I had. Do we have a recommendation of the committee?
Move approval.
I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Member Flynn,
Aye.
Member McDonald,
Aye.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
The motion carries 3-0.
Thank you very much. The next item is the agreement for citywide street sweeping. I'll let staff read the recommendation, and we do have a public speaker on this, Ms. Shirley Godwin.
Yes.
Staff can take it away.
Thank
Please.
you, Chair Perrello and committee members.
Hello, Mr. Housley. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thanks. So we're recommending that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend to the City Council that they approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Venco Power Sweeping in the amount not to exceed $1,800,000 for a 3-year term ending in September 30th, 2023. And this is for all street sweeping services throughout the city of Oxnard and involving city facilities. Oh, it isn't. Next slide, please. That's what you said. I hear you. Thank you. So a bit of the background, the city of Oxnard has traditionally outsourced sweeping services, including city streets, alleyways, parking lots, and city facilities. Regular sweeping is required under the city's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit issued by the State Water Resources Board. Sweeping days are generally the next business day after refuse collection. This is a quality of life issue, just like you don't want to pave a street and then cut it up. It's better to coordinate this schedule with the residential collection service in the city so that if there is anything spilled from waste vehicles, then we're also picking that up. Next, please. I'm going to leave this up here for a little bit so those watching at home can see it. This is an itemization of approximately 21,000 curb miles that are swept annually in the city. Again, I'm letting those at home review this. Sweeping prevents trash, plant debris, and sediment from entering the city's storm drain system, which is a even more concern when you're in a coastal community. Next slide, please. So here's a background of the process that got us here today. On April 1st, the city's purchasing division conducted formal solicitation for these services. Bid was posted on the city's website, publicpurchase.com. The city received 2 qualified bid responses prior to the May 13th, 2020 deadline. Venco Power Sweeping was selected as the lowest responsible bidder. Next, please. Again, I'm just going to leave this up here just for a few seconds so those at home can see it. I will bring it back up if there's any questions. We're looking at approximately $49,000 a month in a normal month for sweeping services for all of the different services that we contract for. Now, if there are rainstorms or holiday weeks where the sweeping cannot occur due to the staggered schedule being in conflict with the posted signs on the streets, we would not sweep during that time. And as you can see with the other table that we can also go back to, the city is not paying Venco to not sweep any streets in the city. Next, please. So this new contract is very similar to the current contract with Venco. Regular citywide sweeping, also response to on-call emergency sweeping needs. This occurs various times of the day and night, on weekends, for car accidents, or if you have hazardous material spills or what have you, that is covered. Sweeping, remapping, and rerouting. So let's say if they miss a spot or we get a complaint, they can also go back and complete that. As I said in the prior slide, the city does not pay Venco for days that sweeping is interrupted for whatever reason that is. And as the lowest responsible bidder, we're recommending Venco continue, or that we enter in a new agreement with Venco to continue these services. Next, please. Here's another financial impact slide that further itemizes the funds that help pay for the sweeping services within the city. I'll leave that up there 4 or 5 seconds. This table shows the remaining cost for the estimated remaining cost for the rest of this fiscal year. And we will request in subsequent fiscal years up to the termination of this recommended contract to cover these services as well. Next, please. That's the end of my presentation. I can take any questions at this time.
Do we have any technical questions from the committee? If not, hearing any request to hear the public comment from Shirley, please.
Councilman Perillo, can you hear me, Chair Perillo?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I thought.
If we get Shirley, if she picks up.
Hello?
Hi, Shirley, you're live in the council meeting, or in the committee meeting. We're on the street sweeping item, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Please begin now.
All right. I'm very concerned about the way the street sweeping has been going on now since the COVID changes. This on again, off again sweeping, and the various notices that come out from the city. I've seen the ones that say they're not going to ticket on street sweeping day, but what's been happening in our neighborhood and appears to be throughout South Oxnard on the street sweeping days, sometimes they come and sometimes they don't come. And in spite of the large number of cars, because of the dense population in South Oxnard, people have been extremely conscientious on street sweeping day. Our neighborhood is on the Friday afternoon. Saviors Road, at least south of Bard, is Fridays. And regularly we are not swept. And I know the vast majority of residents are moving their cars because it's really quite stunning when you go out to see a whole side of the street empty. And when I get my paper on Friday mornings, one side or the other, totally empty. But this Friday, sweeper never came. Trash is still in the street, not only in my immediate neighborhood on the side that was supposed to be swept, but I happened to go down Saviors Road, picked up food at Best Breakfast. Same thing there. We're covering the South Winds neighborhood. And the owner of the restaurant there at the corner, he's very conscientious on street sweeping day. He puts out cones so his clients can't park in front to make sure the sweeper can sweep, and the sweeper has not been coming the last 2 times that was their schedule. And so something needs to be done about this. As stated in the presentation, the goals of street sweeping are to keep our city clean and nice looking. That goal is not being met, and certainly not the goal of picking up things so they don't go into the ocean. And when we eventually get rain, all this stuff is going to end up in the ocean, go into the storm drains and out the ocean and pollute the beach. And we have another problem that's been going on for a very long time, especially on the Friday sweepings. Any kind of holiday during the early part of the week, we don't get swept. And particularly in November, December, with the holidays, we can go weeks and weeks with not sweeping. This is also leaf drop time of year. And occasionally we really do get rain, and then all this stuff
30
swishes out
seconds.
to the ocean. So something needs to be looked at how this contract is handled and how it's monitored. And on these days now that are not scheduled to be skipped, is the city paying? Like, did the city pay to sweep in South Oxnard this Friday? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. I mean, I'm sorry, Ms. Godwin. Ms. Godwin, thank you. Madam Clerk, I see no other requests for speakers.
Excuse me, Chair, if I can respond to that, because that hits a topic that I would like to bring up regarding our current situation under COVID that I can clarify with you and the public.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So based upon the caller, we have had some issue getting to curbs. That's our basic need for sweeping, is making sure we can get to the curb. PD has made the prudent decision due to COVID. There's a lot of people still at home right now. Schools are out, so parking can be an issue. Now, we're going to work directly with the neighborhoods and PD and our route drivers to better assess daily where we can get into the curb reasonably and where those areas are where we can't get to the curb. Sweeping will continue, but again, it's a curb access issue. And her last point, where we don't sweep, we are not paying for days that they don't sweep.
Any other comments, Mr.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions if I can.
Go good. Mr. Housley, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Mr. Housley, looking at the contract, I see that we have access to, or it seems like we have access to their GPS information.
Bingo.
To track the sleeper to see where it's at. Nice fist pump, Mr. Chair. You're still on screen.
You really, you're
so,
right. Yes.
My curiosity is, are we actively monitoring that information? And I ask this because I got calls from the Blackstock neighborhood over the last 2 weeks saying everybody moved their cars, no sweeper came. And I know a couple weeks ago, staff drove the area and looked at it. But I'm just curious if we are taking advantage of the GPS information to make sure that, and not that I don't distrust Venco, I think they're an excellent firm, but I come from the old school of trust but verify. So I'm just curious what kind of monitoring we're doing.
So Councilmember McDonald, excellent question. Yes, they do have GPS, and yes, we do have access to it. I'm working internally to see how we can possibly project that on our website and information so that it's live data. I've done that in other cities, so that's something I'm looking at right now. We can use GPS to track them. We will use GPS to track them. It's right now, the drivers who are on the collection route seem to be the most logical group of people that can tell us where parking is an issue or where we can get to the curb. So we're going to use that information as well. And just because you mentioned Blackstock, we did sweep that on the 28th. However, this week is a holiday week that shifts the collection schedule one day. And on those days, the signage does not coincide with when people are supposed to park and move for sweeping. So traditionally, and as you can see on the table in the staff report, we are not going to be sweeping for 10 holiday weeks or if there's rain. So we have to incorporate all these things and keep our eye on it, but we will use all of the tools we can to get us through this COVID crisis.
And maybe there's a way we can update the website to see, because some of the people seem to think that last Friday was their sweep day, not this coming Friday. So I don't know if there's a better way we can communicate to the neighborhoods via the internet of exactly when you can expect to be swept.
Councilmember McDonald, that is the information I'm trying to take from our GPS system and project onto the website. The signage is neighborhood specific. I'm looking at a piece of a map right now, and some of it gets pretty complicated in certain parts of the city where it's the first and third day of the month on one side of the street, and on another side of the street it's the second and fourth. So we want to get all that information together so it's live, available to our public, and a lot more easily accessible. So we're going to work hard on getting the information out, working closer with the neighborhoods, with police, and with our eyes that are already out there in the field to get us through this COVID situation.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, do you have any questions?
Well, I appreciate the questions by committee member McDonald, and I think they're appropriate, and also the feedback that we're getting from resident Shirley Godwin, because I have interacted with her and with several others about street sweeping, and there's no question that because of the circumstances, it does make the job a lot more challenging. There's no question about it. So I think Mr. Housley, what I kind of bring together with this is that you're saying we're going to be working more closely with neighborhoods. And one of the criticisms I have, and it's not necessarily city government's fault, but one of the criticisms I have is that we don't really have an effective means of communicating with the public, and that's really frustrating. And so the job of actually getting this information out becomes a very difficult one. Number one. Number two is I'm happy to hear of this renewed effort of communicating with the neighborhoods, because I think it's really important. And the third thing I wanted to ask Mr. Housley is with the fact that with not issuing tickets and then maybe some cars not being moved, that means that some areas aren't getting properly cleaned. And then when there's water that runs through the gutters, or if there happens to be rain, then that is washing into the ocean. How is that monitored, or how? I mean, I know the county monitors water quality, but how do we know how much is going into the ocean if these areas, in fact, aren't being swept because there are parked cars there? How do we, from an environmental standpoint, how do we judge this, the effect of this crisis on that particular issue?
Mayor, to answer your question, the sweeping is one part of several efforts to manage the city's NPDES permit. So there are catch basins that are regularly addressed and cleaned, so that if something from the street happens to end up in there, there's a backup for getting to those items before they get into the storm drain through a first flush storm. You have our commitment. COVID has caused all kinds of changes to our lives where we're going to retail or anywhere else. We're dealing with those here. We understand those are big, important issues. So we just have to spend more time managing it and talking to the public. I'd also like to give the number to call if you feel that your street, we've missed it because there was curb access. We would like you to call our 385-8060 number in the Public Works Call Center. We're daily taking addresses from anybody who calls in with that information. We can follow up then with the sweeper, and we have the ability to do on-call services. If it does not necessarily fall on a scheduled day because of a parking issue or another interruption, we can follow up while we're in this crisis.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say to my two fellow committee members, and I know this will resonate with Ms. Godwin and with others, I don't know how it will ever be resolved. It's largely one of the byproducts of overcrowding, is that, especially during this crisis that has provoked an economic crisis, and hypothetically overcrowding is only going to, has only been or will be exacerbated by this. I'm just really concerned, Mr. Housley, members of this committee, that with the amount of cars that are on the street, that over time, as areas become ever more to get, even with ticketing, it's going to be very difficult to get the cars off the street and really do the job that we should be doing. So I don't know, given all these different changing factors, whether we need to reevaluate exactly how we do this street sweeping. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Mayor, to your point, I'd like to add that we're regularly in contact with PD. I had a discussion with one of the commanders this morning. When they do begin enforcing again. It will be a phased process where you're going to start with warnings, get people back into the behavior before you just come down and start citing people, because we know that can be an issue too. So we're going to be very careful and keep our eyes out as we're moving forward through this so that we can maintain our permit and provide the quality of life services expected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Housley. I'd just like to repeat the number that you gave again. If there were members of the public that had an issue with the street sweeping, 805-385-8060, 805-385-8060. Mr. Housley, and Councilman McDonald, yes, the fist pump was the threat, because on page 29 of 47 of the staff report, there's an indication that these street sweepers have the GPS tracking. And it's great that Mr. Housley has taken it upon himself to try to coordinate this and get it together. If there's anything that the city management can help you to get that done and accomplished, I hope that we give enough impetus to stimulus to have the management give you assistance if they need it. But along with your last comment, as far as where the streets need to be swept or where the cleanliness is and the opportunities to get the street sweeper next to the curb, and before, when I'm done, please explain, why does a street sweeper need to get to the curb? Some people may not visualize that, but as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'm sure you can explain it extremely well. I would love to use the GPS on the street sweeper going down when he has to go around a car that has not been moved, that GPS goes right to the police department and we get a cadet that goes and gives a citation. Because before the COVID, that is what's happened. And people would come home and see the street swept, and all of a sudden there's some trash on the street, and they would raise Cain with the city because we didn't do anything about it. Well, the reason the trash was on the street was because, ladies and gentlemen, you visualize the street sweeper's not going to run right through the parked car. This is not like a snowplow on the East Coast. He's not going to push it out of the way. He's going to go around it and get back to the curb and gutter and clean the street. I would love to see the opportunity for this contract and the implementation of a direct contract with the police department and the street sweeper to get the notice of violations. Now, why am I saying that? I'm not trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, but when we've had this matter and the issue of trucks and the citations and the word shall in an ordinance, there are certain things that are to be done and there's no getting around it. If we have response times needed, there's a high profile issue. We have the police department there, but if we have something and there is a sign on the street that says no street sweeping between this and this, or no parking between this and this, and we have the majority of residents abiding by the rules and some don't, there needs to be a short learning curve, and that is usually impacted with a fine, because we enforce the rules to treat everybody the same. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I learned that as a kid. And those are my comments. And Mr. Housley, can you please address the issue of why you need to get next to the curb and gutter?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Two short answers. One, the street is designed in such a way for there to be fall towards the curb for water. Wind blows, you want most of the items to go towards the curb. The sweeper is designed to run against the curb. If you look at the brooms that are spinning, they spin in a certain direction so that all gets contained inside the vehicle, and then they can recover that. If you just go down a street with a bunch of parked cars and you are in the middle of the crown of the street, you're only able to hit what is in that part of the street. And because there's no curb there to contain what it is that you're trying to move in one direction or the other, it just spreads it out. It's the best comparison I can make is when you were sent outdoors to rake up all the leaves by your parents, and then your older brother came home and ran through the pile. It's kind of like running through the pile if you don't have access to the curb. That's the best way I can explain it.
Very good example, and thank you very much. Do we have a recommendation from staff on this matter, please?
I recommend approval.
And second,
Okay, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Member Flynn,
aye.
Member McDonald,
Aye.
Chair Perrello.
Yes,
The motion carries 3-0.
thank you. The next item, D4, is your Public Works and Transportation Committee. The subject, letters of support for designation of United States Bicycle Route 95 and Clean Mobility Options Grant application. And I'll have staff read it. It's a two-part recommendation, please. And thank you again, Ms. Tatiana Arenado. Thank you.
Good morning again, Chair and Committee. I'm Tatiana Arno, your city engineer, and I'm here to request letters of support for US Bike Route 95 and Bike Ventura's grant application. The recommendation is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the city manager to, one, submit a letter of support for bicycling and non-motorized use by designating United States Bicycle Route 95, and second, to submit a letter of support for Bike Ventura's application from California Climate Investments Clean Mobility Options for a community transportation needs assessment within the city of Oxnard. So the U.S. bike route system is a national network of numbered bicycle routes, similar to your highway system or your state highway system, things of that nature. So more than 14,000 miles of routes have been established in 26 states. The California Bicycle Coalition and the Adventure Cycling Association have both proposed a Pacific Coast route in California be designated as U.S. Bike Route 95. This runs through the city of Oxnard on Harbor Boulevard, Channel Islands Boulevard, Ventura Road, and Wainimi Road. Next slide. So here is a map of the proposed bike route. You'll see that it's coming from the north side through Ventura into the county area. And then, like I mentioned, it's going on Harbor Boulevard, Channel Islands Boulevard, and Ventura and Wainimi Roads through the city of Oxnard. So the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, which is in other words AASHTO, have recommended that a Pacific Coast bicycle route corridor through California be identified as US Bike Route 95, a portion of which is located in Oxnard. So designating this for interstate connections and possibilities for cross-country bicycle travel, bringing out-of-state tourism spending, and generating interest in our region. Bicycle tourism is a growing industry contributing to the economies of communities that provide facilities for tourists. As a city, Oxnard stands to benefit from this opportunity both economically and from the health and environmental related benefits of encouraging bicycle travel in our region. In order for the route to receive an official designation from AASHTO, it must be acceptable to all cities and counties that the route passes in the state, which is documented through a letter of support to Caltrans. Once all California cities and county approvals are in place, Caltrans can apply to AASHTO for official recognition. In our region, the County of Ventura, City of Ventura, and City of Santa Barbara have sent letters of support. Our city traffic engineering staff has reviewed and proposed the route and reviewed the proposed route and found it to be suitable for cyclists, and therefore city staff recommends that City Council endorse the nomination of US Bike Route 95 for AASHTO designation. Next, please. So the Clean Mobility Options Voucher Grant Program is from California Climate Investments, which is a statewide initiative that aims to essentially reduce greenhouse gas emissions, strengthen the economy, and improve public health and the environment, particularly in disadvantaged communities. This initiative includes a clean mobilities option, transportation needs assessment, which Bike Ventura submitted a grant for in the amount of $50,000. So if successful, the city of Oxnard will not be administering these grant funds. We will only be a supporting role for this. Next slide, please. So here's a map that shows the disadvantaged communities within the Oxnard area. As you could tell, there's a significant amount of our region that is highlighted here. So we think that this is a good opportunity for Bike Ventura. Next, please. So the grant project will conduct outreach, engagement, and collaboration with disadvantaged community members with a focus on the mixed tech speaking farm workers, Spanish speakers, and residents who do not have regular internet access. It also includes a variety of incentives such as free bike repair, free bike lights, and raffles. This is for those in those disadvantaged communities. And it also includes COVID-19 precaution supplies that will be used, such as masks, hand sanitizers, and other PPE for the outreach team and the participants. Next, please. So Bike Ventura's goal is to provide the city with a report that includes the community's voice on their travel behavior and interest in the first and last mile options for rail and bus, interest in shared use clean solutions such as electric car share and bike share. City staff will attend the outreach meetings and review any of the proposed recommendations. Bike Ventura will provide the city with a completed report for use in preparing future grant applications. So we'll be able to bolster our applications here in the city with this report that Bike Ventura will be providing to us. Also, the outreach will be very helpful for us to better understand the community's voice, which will provide a more competitive application for future active transportation grant funding. So there is no financial impact in supporting this US Bike Route 95 designation, nor for supporting Bike Ventura's grant application. That concludes this presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any specific questions on the exact presentation? Other than that, we have Ms. Pat Brown, a member of the public who should speak. Committee members, do you have any specific on the presentation? We'll deliberate later.
No.
Thank you. Mayor?
This is a win-win situation. I don't have any problems with it. I think it's great.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can we get Ms. Pat Brown?
I'm technologically disadvantaged.
Yes.
Hi, Pat. We're on the bike routes item. You have 3 minutes to
Yes.
address the committee. Please begin.
Yes. Okay. My comments. Number one, a number of years ago, one of my neighbors, he was a retired person, and he liked to ride his bicycle all over the place. And he wanted a bike path to Ormond Beach, but he didn't want to come on the main thoroughfare streets. He wanted a route that would get him there without going on the main street. And I told him I didn't know if there was one, and I tried to get him some information, but going to that specific area, there wasn't any. So I think that number one, besides having the routes, which we definitely need, we also need to put out a little map of that route and make it convenient, small enough that people can carry it around with them in their pocket, but big enough that they can actually read it. And this needs to be done as soon as we possibly can, frankly, because this is one of the best weather areas of Southern California. And so if people wanted to bike as a trip, and I've known a lot of people to do that, they certainly would like to have this route map, because they told me so in the past within the last 10 years or so. So we really need to get this going. I mean, this should have happened many years ago, frankly. From my experiences with people telling me that they wanted it. So let's do this, and let's make it big enough that we have a route all the way to Ormond Beach and down the coast, and as far as we can, that's safe, and also have a map that goes along with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Comments by the committee?
No, I would agree with the mayor. It's win-win for everybody. So if there's no comments, I'd move approval.
Second.
And I do feel that it will be very beneficial to the city, but I would like to see slide number 8, please. Bingo. Okay, on this particular slide, we're indicating the disadvantaged community areas in the city of Oxnard. And I would just like to bring this point home. I'm sure that there are people in a much higher smarts and pay bracket than me and figured this out. The fatalities that have happened from early morning auto, bicycle, truck, bicycle collisions of people riding to work, are they congregated in these areas? Because if they're not, I would definitely consider that is one of the things. There are a lot of people that ride their bicycles, whether it's, economics, health, or stuff to work. And I cringe when I see some of them and how close the cars come to them. I think that should be something that be indicated on this because if not, I do wonder, and somebody maybe can address this going forward. And if we're acceptable in this grant, are there strings required will there be strings the city is obligated to on whatever the findings of this grant are?
No, so basically this is the findings in this report will just help us better understand the needs of the disadvantaged communities in terms of their transit. We will not be held to anything. It's just a report that we'll be able to use to leverage our future grant applications for like the active transportation grant and whatnot. As far as where the locations of the fatalities are, those are kind of spread out throughout the city. I don't believe that they're necessarily congregated in one specific area, but I will have staff look further into that and add that into the report for council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ernest. I appreciate that tremendously. Thank you. I have no other comments. The recommendation of the staff the recommendation of the committee. We had two. I'll move the action. Does we need a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Member Flynn,
Aye.
Member McDonald,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
The motion carries 3-0.
Moving to item E, items for future agendas. I know that we have something coming back where we're going to revisit the items that have been already suggested, and we're going to have basically a cleanup report. I will not add anything to the list till we get that cleanup report. But do we have anything recommended from the two other members of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'm still kind of hoping for some sort of a presentation on protected railway crossings, quiet zones.
Okay. So noted. I'm sure the city manager and public works are taking note of that. They'll add that to the list. Mayor?
Yes. Mr. Chair, this is an issue that I've just recently brought up again with the city manager, and he said he would get me an answer on this. But this is something that Councilman and Committee Member McDonald has also asked, and that is the status of the Intelligent Traffic System, the ITS system, what the status of that is. This question has been brought up I don't know how many times, and I cannot say right now what the status of that ITS program is, even though it's been brought up and there have been responses, but those responses, from my perspective, have not been clear.
Okay, we'll make sure that I'm sure city manager and public works are making notation of that also. Okay, with that, we'd move to adjourn, but I would like to share with the public that the items that have been come forward with the Measure Row Oversight Committee, they've been asking for signage, and other members of the council have been asking. We recently have signage on a tremendous amount of projects that Measure Row money was used to take care of infrastructure and obligations that the city of Oxnard had. We have a lot of people asking questions, where'd the money go? There's an opportunity to drive around town and see some of these signs at these sites to find out for yourself where the money went. Thank you very much. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.